Alright, welcome in class. Today we are obviously learning about ancient Egypt, okay? A civilization from thousands of years ago that has really just shaped the world as we know it today. So let's go ahead and get into it. I've got my notes here. We really need to talk to the principal about getting new projectors so that you guys can also see my notes, see the PowerPoint I've made. First things first, the ancient Egypt was built along the Nile River. The Nile River runs north to south. And left behind a black soil after it flooded that made it very good for farming. The land of Egypt at the time was actually known as Kemet. Kemet, remember that? K-E-M-E-T, yes, Kemet, remember Kemet. Okay, and that stands for the Black Land. So this soil was used for all of their farming, and they formed their entire calendar around it. We've got a visualization here. We will imagine this as our river basin. It is a bit different, that's okay. And in it, we've got our dry soil that really can't be used for anything. It's too dry, it's crumbly. You can't do much with that, but add in the water of the Nile as it flooded. And now you have this abundance of wet, moist soil that you're able to grow crops in. And even when the Nile dried up and was no longer filling the basin with the moisture, the ground was still moist. I wouldn't say the Nile fully dried up, but when it was no longer overflowing, the ground around it was still moist and was able to grow all of those crops. Gotta clean off our hand here. These examples are getting a little messy. Now, that's really how they were able to have a civilization there at all. Without food or water, you really can't have anything, right? So that's the base of the entire civilization, really. And then they had hundreds of gods and goddesses that they believed in, each with their own specific powers and did their own specific thing. The ones most notable are Ra, the sun god, sun, Ra, the sun god. Anubis, the god of mummification. Okay. Isis, the goddess of a magic. And motherhood. motherhood. Her husband, Osiris, who's the god of the afterlife. The afterlife looks very different in ancient Egypt than it does today. And Horus, the falcon-headed god of the sky, who is the son of Isis and Osiris. So let's talk a little bit about each one. So, Ra, the sun god, his role, so Ra, his role was the creator god, ruler of all, and the symbol of light and life. His appearance was a falcon head with a solar disc on top, all right? And it was believed that he would sail his sunboat across the sky each day and throughout the underworld at night. And each morning he would be reborn, representing sunrise and renewal. So that is believed to be what the sun actually is. So it would rise, go across the whole sky, and then when it would be out, he would be in the underworld. And then each morning, he would come back to us. And he is the bringer of light. So thank you, Ra. Thank you for our beautiful summer sunny days. Now, Anubis. Mummy. He was Anubis. He was the god of mummification. So he guards the tombs and guides the souls through the underworld. And the underworld is not what we think of when we think of hell or the underworld like Greek mythology. The underworld was more of a transitional place where you would go through trials and tribulations, you would meet scary creatures, you would meet people that helped you along your journey, and Anubis would take you through here, and then at the end of it he would weigh your heart on his scale in front of Osiris, and he would weigh your heart against the feather Ma'at, M-A-A-T, Ma'at. And that was actually the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. And that was to judge your purity. So if you weighed less than, you were this one, if your heart weighed less than or equal to the feather, then you were considered to have a pure life. And they would Anubis would take you to Osiris and take you to the field of reeds, which is considered the heavenly paradise, where it was a perfect personification of Egypt, and it had crops year-round and beautiful weather, and it was essentially what heaven would be for them. If your heart weighed more than the feather, I did it backwards earlier, you want it to weigh less than or equal to the feather, and then if you weighed more than the feather, then that means that you did not have a pure life. And contrary to popular belief, they would not torture you, you would not go to a hell, but you would actually be eaten by a creature that was a crocodile, lion, hippopotamus thing called Ammit, A-M-M-I-T, Ammit. And he would eat your soul, essentially. He's known as the Death Eater, and he would, Eater of Death, This isn't Harry Potter, this is Egypt. And you would now cease to exist. You would not, your soul does not exist any longer. So that was a very scary thing for Egyptians to think about, because no longer existing, that's really scary, right? It's also scary to be thinking about being tortured in hell. So you pick which is worse. You pick which you would prefer, really, but that's what the Egyptians believed in. So next we have Isis, and she, again, the goddess of magic, healing, motherhood. I feel like I could use her in my life, seriously. So, Isis. Magic. Motherhood. So, Isis is actually very interesting because she was not just praised by the Egyptians. She actually made it through a lot of the Mediterranean. And they even had shrines for her and temples for her in Rome, that's very not common for that time. She is a protector, a healer, and a powerful magician. Powerful. She is a very powerful woman. She appeared to be a woman with either a crown shaped like a throne or with wings. She brought her husband Osiris back to life after he was unalived by his brother due to jealousy, and then she conceived their son Horus. And she is the representation of ideal motherhood and divine feminine power. I'm telling you, I could use this. I could use this. Divine feminine energy, okay? She was like the opposite of Andrew Tate before he existed. We love her, okay? But not in a toxic way. Next, we have Osiris. So, Osiris. Osiris. And he is actually the god of the afterlife and resurrection. So again, he is where Anubis takes you to weigh your heart. If you are pure, then you get to go with Osiris into the afterlife. And Osiris, again, afterlife. Okay. Gotta make sure this thing doesn't fall over. It's not very sturdy, is it? I guess you wouldn't know, but I do. So, Osiris, he is god of death, rebirth, and the underworld. And the underworld, again, not what you would generally think of when you think of an underworld. When I hear underworld, I'm thinking Hades, River of Souls, stuff like that. No. That is not how it is. You do not go there, and you just live there. You go on a journey through there to get to the heavenly gates at the end of the journey, but he oversees the underworld. He is often depicted as a mummified man with green skin, wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt. Now, this does sound kind of scary. I thought that he's the scariest one so far, I feel like. Anubis is also kind of scary, but I feel like this one's definitely the scariest so far. But that's okay. I mean, he came back to life, so He was killed by his brother Set due to jealousy, and he was resurrected again by Isis, his wife. And he became the ruler of Duat, which is the underworld. And he is the symbol of eternal life and rebirth. The crops along the Nile were said to grow from his body. So he was really the one that brought everybody their crops, their food. That's what it was believed. So if they weren't having good crops, then they better figure out what they did to make Osiris mad. All right. And next, we have Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis, and he is the god of the sky and kingship. So kingship. So he was the protector of pharaohs and a symbol of a royal power. He was a falcon-headed man, often wearing the double crown of Egypt. That's how he's depicted. And he actually lost his eye while fighting Set to avenge his father Osiris, who was again unalived by him. And now that eye is a symbol known as the Eye of Horus, and it is a symbol of protection and healing. And pharaohs actually were considered a living Horus. So pharaohs are considered rulers, but also gods, which is very interesting. Which brings us more into pharaohs. They were buried in the pyramids. So the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is the seventh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know why I counted like that. 7th wonder of the world. One of the 7 wonders of the world. It was built for the pharaoh Khufu, who ruled about 2560 BC. Long time ago, obviously. Many moons ago. More about some of the pharaohs. So the famous King Tut, he was actually not famous during his lifetime. He became famous King Tut became famous after his death because they found his tomb still intact after 3,000 years. He doesn't have a lot of notability though about his life when he was actually a ruler. The most famous thing about him is that nobody stole his stuff. That's crazy. So he was really he came into power at 9. He died pretty young. He was only in power for 10 years. It's not a lot of time to do much. And he was so young. So died about 17, 18 years old, and really not a lot of excitement there. They did take the golden mask. That is one of the most famous artifacts, is the golden mask that they took from his tomb. And this is another thing he's very notable for. Post-mortem, obviously. His tomb sparked the Pharaoh's curse, which is that if you disturb the tomb of a pharaoh that you will be plagued with bad luck, because very shortly afterwards, many of the people involved in the excavation of the tomb became unalived in very mysterious ways. Now, most of the people that worked there they did live long lives, so obviously that is, you know, a little scary, spooky story, scary, spooky tale, but could it be true? I don't know. What do you think? And then we have the renowned, iconic Cleopatra VII. She was the last pharaoh for ancient Egypt, and she was actually not even Egyptian. She was Macedonian Greek, and she came into the power because Greek kind of overtook Egypt, and she came into power that way. But she was viewed as a genuine Egyptian pharaoh, not just a foreign ruler, because she really embraced Egyptian culture. She embraced the language, she embraced the clothing, the history, the language. She embraced everything. And so the Egyptians actually they really respected her, even though she was not actually an Egyptian. And she is most notable for her famous alliances and romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. In her she was trying, I can't think of words today, she was trying to protect Egypt by forming an alliance with them. Her and Mark were unfortunately defeated by Octavian, who is also later renamed as Augustus. And that is when Egypt officially became part of the Roman Empire. When they were defeated, she took her own life. It was believed for a long time that it was by a snake bite, but some historians are now thinking it may have just been poison. May have been poison instead. And they have actually not found her tomb yet. They are still searching for her tomb today. Do you think it exists? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe after she took her own life, they did not bury her royally. Maybe the Romans did not do that to her. I don't know. I guess we'll find out if they ever find it. Now, that's our segment on pharaohs. Let's talk about hieroglyphs. These are interesting because they are their language. This is their writing, but it's not, we couldn't read it. They're not letters, they're drawings that depict words, sounds, letters, and it really it depends on, the order and what's going on. And we had no clue what was going on. We found it and we just didn't understand. But thankfully, the Rosetta Stone came in clutch, and we were able to compare the writing on the Rosetta Stone from the other languages with the Egyptian hieroglyphs and learn what each one meant. And that's really how we started to learn and more about ancient Egypt. So, a fun little thing. Let's draw a few hieroglyphs. So, some of them were easy. A hand is a hand, so let's get some room here. is a hand. Hand. Same for a foot. And then we have water. Water. It looks like waves. And that one's one that, you know, maybe it's a little bit harder to know what that one is. Hand and foot, that's easy. Water, what? That could be, that's squiggles. That could be anything. And let's see, I've got another good one. I know I do. We've got a lock. That's a fun one. And what is that? You know what I mean? So a lock. Okay, water I can kind of understand. This looks like glasses. You know what I mean? Like, that does not look like a lock to me. Maybe in ancient Egypt, but I would assume that was glasses personally. So they're getting, I'm glad we got the Rosetta Stone. I'm glad we know what they're saying. All right, that's for sure. And so the hieroglyphs would kind of tell the story. They could be read left to right or right to left, depending on which way the characters were facing. So, you know, these are facing left to right. So if I were to write, he put his hand in the water, you know, it would be hand in the water, but maybe I want to say that he put his water, he used his hand, he put his water on the foot. Or I wanted to write it backwards. I wanted to read it right to left. That's what I'm trying to say. I wanted you to read it right to left. Then I would face my hand the other way. Now water is kind of like, it can go either way, right? But if I wanted to, now that's not as good of a drawing. We're gonna ignore that. None of these are very good. I'm not an artist, I'm a teacher, okay? I'm not an art teacher. But now that's hand, water. And now you're reading it right to left because the hand is facing this way. How interesting is that? So you go in a room and you've got to look and see which way are they facing, which way are the characters facing, which way are the faces facing. It's very interesting. Moving on, life in ancient Egypt. So both men and women wore makeup. This was the norm. They would use kohl, which is a black eyeliner, to protect themselves from the sun and to symbolically ward off evil. And men and women, pharaohs, commoners, everybody did this. They also, these are some fun facts about them, invented the 365-day calendar, which is crazy. They invented this calendar because they wanted to predict when the Nile would flood, so they could predict when they were going to be able to, you know, sow their crops and have more food. And so they based it around the star Sirius, or the dog star, and when it rose in the morning sky before the flood. So this star, it would rise in the morning sky right before the flood, and they knew that. They paid attention to that because Egyptians were very smart. They were a very intelligent civilization, and it was very accurate. They based their calendar on that. They had 3 seasons that would represent when it flooded, when they could plant the crops, and then when they could actually like get the crops out of the and start using them. And this calendar was so accurate, it was only off by 1/4 of a day. It was so accurate to an actual real solar year. It was off by 1/4 of a day, which is the same problem that we had with our current calendar that we use before we started using leap years, and we lost an entire day. So that's very interesting. And the next one was the Julius calendar, which Julius Caesar made, which was kind of like based around the Egyptian calendar. And then our current calendar, I believe, called the Georgian or something like that calendar. That's not gonna be on the test, so you don't need to worry about that. It's just a fun fact, okay? I said it's not gonna be on the test. It's fine. It's not on the test. You don't need to worry about it. It's all good. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay? It doesn't matter what the name of the calendar is. Okay? You're good. You're good. You're doing good. Don't worry about it. You're doing good. Okay? Okay. Thanks. Okay. They also made toothpaste out of eggshells and pumice, and they had surgical tools. Now this is even more interesting because they were performing surgeries. Obviously they were doing it on the dead to make them, you know, take out all of their organs and separate them for each god and stuff like that. But they were performing it on real people, I believe, as well. And they had scalpels, forceps, hooks, cautery tools, bone saws and drills and prosthetics. They had prosthetics. This is the craziest part. They had prosthetics. There was a corpse who was found with a wooden big toe that was positioned for functionality, which showed that not only did the Egyptians understand surgery, but they also understood rehabilitation. And the Egyptians, it really just is fascinating. We can talk about this for hours, but we'll stop it there for now. Okay, we're running out of time and the bell's about to ring, so I will let you guys go. That concludes our lesson for today. If you have any questions you would like to stay after class to ask, feel free to. We can chat about that. And otherwise, I will see you next time. Have a good day, and don't forget, okay? Don't forget all the things that I told you, other than the Georgian calendar. Okay, that one doesn't matter, but all the other things, remember that it could be on the test, okay? So, all right, bye-bye.